Welcome to the Every Brain is Different podcast. It is Samantha and Lauren here with you. And we are back for part 2 of how to talk to your kid and give them more positive feedback than negative feedback. So last week we talked about how kids who are neurodivergent receive way more negative feedback. Yeah, they receive way more negative feedback than positive feedback, especially at school. And so when they're at home, we want to counter that with all the positive feedback. Not all the positive feedback, but you can still give them negative feedback, but just give them more positive than negative.
Just be aware of it.
Yeah. Just be aware. And this is one of my goals for this year, is to really focus on this, especially with one of my kids, because I've noticed that I give him a lot of negative feedback, and I've been even more aware of it since I did the episode last week. And yeah, it's hard. Not because he's a bad kid. It's not because he's a bad kid. It's because he has ADHD and he is constantly getting distracted, constantly like running around. And so where did we go? Oh, we went on a trip to McCall, Idaho. And while we were there, we were like walking on the sidewalk, going to different places, and he was constantly like running in front of me or running behind me, playing in the snow, not keeping up with us. And I was always like, hey, come on. Hey, come on. You got to keep up with us. Hey, come on. And so I felt so bad. I was like, I'm giving him so much negative feedback. And so when I noticed him doing something that was really awesome, or not even like super awesome, just like normal, I guess, I tried to give him more positive feedback and being like, thank you for keeping up with us. Thank you for, not having a meltdown today. I said it better than that, but I was basically like, I can tell that you're working really hard to keep your emotions in check and to, be nice to your brother and sister, even though you want to hit them. I can tell that you're trying really hard to do that. And so thank you, just different stuff like that, because we were walking from the ice rink to a pizza place, and he was constantly in the snow. And like, I'm all about getting in the snow when you have the appropriate clothes on and you're not going to get all wet and then cry because you're wet and you're cold and we still have to be outside.
Yeah.
So I was just constantly like, hey, get out of the snow. Hey, get out of the snow.
You trying to go from point A to point B. Like,
Yeah.
snow's not on the agenda at the moment.
Yeah. I was like, I just want to get to the pizza place. So yeah, that happened. But it did make me more aware to give him a lot more positive feedback when he was doing things like that were good, and just, him being him, but I could tell that he was working extra hard to stay regulated, or he listened really well and did something the first time I asked him to do it, or, stuff like that.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So giving positive feedback can be a lot harder than negative feedback because we don't notice as much when things are going well. We only notice when things are going poorly. And so that's why we give more negative feedback. This week, we're going to talk about how to intentionally focus on the positive and give meaningful positive feedback so that our kids can hear that more than negative feedback. How many times can I say negative feedback in this episode? I don't know.
I'm going to track. I'm not going to keep track.
Yeah, maybe we'll give a prize out. If you can tell me how many times I said it, I'll give you a prize. Everyone that responds will get a prize because I'm not keeping track. There you go. Okay. The first thing is praise effort, not outcome.
Yes.
So instead of focusing on whether your child succeeded or not, focus on the attempt. So for example, you could say, I saw how hard you tried to stay in the room even though it was loud. Or I saw how you asked for headphones when it was loud. We don't want to teach our kids that they have to stay uncomfortable. And so just praising them for when they ask for an accommodation is fantastic, because then they'll ask for more accommodations and they'll be able to do more things by asking for those accommodations. And then You stuck with the task even though it was frustrating. So this is one that my kids do. One of my kids gets really, really frustrated when something doesn't go right the first time. And he's just, I'm done. I'm giving up. Or if like he's coloring and he colors outside the lines, he rips up the paper. And so when he's coloring and I see that he's gone outside the lines, I tell him, I don't say you did a good job, even though you colored outside the lines. I'm just saying you did a good job. I saw that you were frustrated and you kept going. That's really awesome. And so it's just praising the effort, not the outcome. Because, like we said before, kids work so hard. It's like when they're interrupting, they cannot interrupt, not interrupt, not interrupt. And we don't say anything. And then they interrupt one time. Why are you interrupting all the time? You need to stop interrupting.
And
And
we
so,
didn't see that internal battle that was happening before that particular interruption.
yeah. And so if we just praise them for what we see them when they're working hard to do something, then that will make it so that they want to keep working hard to do something. And this also teaches kids that effort matters even when things don't go perfectly. A lot of neurodivergent kids are perfectionists. And so if you teach them that just the effort in itself is okay, even if you don't achieve what you want to achieve, that goes a long way in helping them understand that effort matters. Sometimes we fail, sometimes we don't we don't do it perfectly, and that's okay. Like it doesn't have to be done perfectly. So the next thing to do is name invisible skills. So call out when they're staying regulated, call out when they're being flexible, call out when they're self-aware. And so by doing this, you are praising them for the effort once again in staying regulated, in their flexibility, in their self-awareness. And you're not just praising them when they get it right. You can say, I see how hard you're working trying to stay regulated. If they have a meltdown, you could still go up to them and say, I saw how hard you were working to stay regulated. I saw how you were trying to manage your emotions. And I really appreciate that effort. How can I help you so that you can be comfortable again? Or, like basically stop having the meltdown, but not in those words. And you have to do this at the very beginning, like, when you start seeing them, like, kind of lose control, that's when you go up to them and use words. If they're already having a meltdown, it's too late for words. Like we've talked about before, it's too late for words. When your kid is having a meltdown, that's when you just go into meltdown mode and you do the things that you've practiced. Hopefully you've practiced skills to do when they have a meltdown. So like deep breathing, going for a walk, listening to a song, something like that, then you practice those things. But if they're at the very beginning and you see the first signs of them losing control, I really appreciate how hard you've been working to stay regulated. How can I help you? Or do you need noise canceling headphones? Do you need to leave? Do you need a break? Something like that before they actually have the meltdown. But when they're in the middle of a meltdown, do not use all the words. It's not going to help them. It's too late. Their rational brain is shut off. You need to just move forward with, yeah. Hopefully you have practice skills when they're calm. And so when they're having a meltdown, that's when you employ those skills and you employ those coping mechanisms. But the time to talk is not that time when they're having a meltdown. And then use descriptive feedback instead of generic praise. So instead of saying good job, describe what you noticed. So going along with the regulation piece, I really like how you asked for headphones when it was too loud so that you could stay regulated. I really appreciate how you moved out of your sister's way when she was coming down the hall because you could see that she had her arms full of stuff and she couldn't see you or whatever. But if you just go up to someone and say good job, I mean, okay, I have someone in my life. Yeah. I have someone in my life that does this. He's just good job. Or I really appreciate it. I'm like, what do you appreciate? Good job for what? Because I want to hear like a specific thing. Or you're so cool. Okay. Why? Yeah. They're just like, I appreciate you. Cool. Why? Tell me why. It just means more when you have a specific example because it's kind of meaningless if you're just like, I appreciate you.
It's just so
Okay.
generic.
It is generic and it makes me feel like they want something from me and they're trying to get on my good side. Maybe that's me being like, you know, I don't know what the word is, but just I can't remember. I want to say narcissist, but that's not the word.
Yeah.
Pessimistic. Pessimistic. Maybe that's just me being like pessimistic or paranoid or whatever, like they're trying to get something out of me. But if someone just comes up to me and they're like, "Good job." Okay. For what?
Yeah.
If you go up to your kid and say good job, they're going to be like, okay. And it's not going to mean anything because they're not going to know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
And then, so for example, some other examples, you can say, you asked for help instead of throwing a toy. That was really awesome. You told me you needed quiet. That was really clear communication. I love how you told me what you needed. Descriptive feedback helps kids feel understood, and then they understand what they did well and why it mattered. A lot of kids who are neurodivergent, adults too, they need to understand the why or else it's meaningless. It's kind of
Yeah.
like when you ask them to do something, if they don't understand why they have to do it, they're probably not going to do it. But if they understand why they have to do it, they're more likely to do it.
Mhm.
And then the fourth thing is to catch neutral or small moments. So positive feedback doesn't have to wait for big wins. You can notice moments of calm, brief cooperation, tiny bits of flexibility, micro repairs after hard moments, or any of those other small things that maybe in the moment you don't really think about it, but they're big things in the kid's life. So, for example, if you are watching a movie and if they're watching a movie and their brother gets in their way, usually, at least in my family, they'd be like, "Hey," and then hit their brother or something to make them go away.
Yeah.
Well, what if they said, "Will you please get out of the way? You're in my way. I can't see the TV." That's kind of a small thing, but also a big thing at the same time. But you can just say, "Hey, I really appreciated how you asked your brother to get out of the way calmly instead of yelling at him or hitting him or whatever."
Mhm.
Or if they show flexibility, like something unexpected happens and they just roll with it instead of having a meltdown. You can say, I really appreciated how we were supposed to go to the store right now, but this person needed something. And so we needed to hurry and do that before we went to the store. I really appreciate how you waited to go to the store after we did this thing. I really appreciate your flexibility and use those words like, I appreciate how you stayed regulated. I appreciate your flexibility. I appreciate you being willing to do something that you didn't want to do, stuff like that. Or I appreciate you waiting. This helps, like noticing the small things helps shift the balance so your child doesn't only notice when something goes wrong, but when something goes right in small ways. And like I said, sometimes something that seems super small to us actually took a lot of effort from your kid. So maybe they want to tell you something that you don't think is super important, but to them it's really important. And they waited to tell you until you got off the phone. That deserves all the praise in the world. Thank you so much for waiting until I got off the phone. I had a really important conversation. I really appreciate you waiting. And then the fifth thing is to separate behavior from identity. So when correction is needed, anchor your child in who they are, not what they did. So we never want your child to feel like they're a bad kid or they're terrible or they're blah, 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 because they did something that maybe they shouldn't have done. And so you can say, you're a good kid, but we can't do this anymore. Or I tell my kids all the time, like, we can't do this anymore. You're not a bad kid because this happened, but just know that this isn't appropriate behavior. Like we needed something else to do instead of doing this. And
Mhm.
then this protects our sense of safety and belonging. knowing that what they did was not so great, but they're still a good person. They're still like, they're not lazy, they're not inept, they're not bad. Like all the things that neurodivergent kids grow up thinking about themselves, I feel like if we can focus on the behavior and not the identity, then that will help them not take in that they're lazy or bad or whatever.
Feel less shame.
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
a big one.
yeah. So they're not gonna feel shame because they're separating that behavior from their identity. Like, just because I do this doesn't mean I am this.
Mhm.
And so I just think that's really important because I was a really high achiever and I still felt like I was lazy. I felt like I wasn't good enough because in my head, things didn't come easy to me and they came easy to other people. But if I procrastinated, that meant that I was lazy. No, just because I procrastinated doesn't mean I was lazy. It means my brain was stopping me from doing what I needed to do. Yeah, it just meant I was procrastinating. And so that's what I hear a lot from neurodivergent adults is that they grew up thinking that they were lazy or bad or whatever, going to hell because they did something. Like I spend a lot of time thinking that I don't know, because I did
Poor
something
child.
bad. I know, like I felt a lot of shame. And I don't know why, because my parents never really said I was bad or lazy or whatever. They were always telling me to calm down and not be so go-getter, you know? They're like, "It's okay if you don't get straight A's." And I'm like, "No, it's not. It's not okay. I have to get straight A's."
I think it's harder when we have like our own expectations for ourselves or
Yeah.
like just what generally like
Yeah.
expectations are.
Yeah.
They're like it's not rule.
Yeah. So
So
just be aware of what you're saying to your kids because you can say something. My parents didn't even say anything to me. Well, my dad did tell me that I needed to get good grades because I need to get a scholarship. But they didn't pound it into me. He was just like, "Hey, I'm not gonna be able to afford college for you. If you wanna go to college, you'll need to get a scholarship, and the best way I know how to do that is to get good grades." And then that translated in my mind to, "You have to get all A's or I won't like you." I don't know why. That's my brain.
yeah.
So, yeah, so my parents were just trying to help me get good grades and inspire me to get good grades. And in my brain, if I didn't get good grades, I'd disappoint them. They would get divorced and then they wouldn't like me anymore. I don't know why, but I'm just saying sometimes when you say things to your kids, their brain spirals
Mm-hmm.
because my parents didn't say anything other than that.
Yeah.
So I don't know where that came from. But anyway, yeah. And then the next thing is to reflect strengths back during hard moments. So positive feedback, like we said before, it does not have to stop during meltdowns. You can say, "I really appreciate how hard you work to stay regulated. I can see you're frustrated. How about we do this? I know you're trying to stay regulated. I know you're trying to not have a meltdown. Let's do this." And just kind of catch it before it goes into a full blown meltdown. And then the next one is to build positive feedback into routine. So make it predictable. So, you might have a ritual where every night before bed, you say one specific positive observation that you made that day. Like, "I saw that you shared with your sister when you weren't asked to. That's really awesome. Thank you." Or a weekly what went well check in. So every Sunday, you can say, "Okay, what went well this week?" And then you can plan for the next week. What's your goal for this next week? What do you plan to do? But you can just talk about what went well. And then writing strengths on sticky notes or whiteboards. My son's occupational therapist did this. He was having a really hard time with self-esteem. And so they wrote down on sticky notes, on Post-its, all the good things that they could think of about him. And it was like 50 different things. And they put that on a board, and then we hung it up in his room where he could look at it. So when he was not feeling so great about himself, he could look at that and remember what was great about him. And that actually did really help him. And his mood improved a lot. His self-esteem improved. It was really awesome. So I highly recommend that. And then predictability helps kids trust that positive attention won't disappear, even if they do inappropriate things. Like they know every night my parent is going to tell me something that they like about me or something that went well today. Even if I mess up during the day, they're going to tell me what went well. I know they're going to tell me one positive thing from the day. And so that just creates more predictability in that they'll understand and know that it's coming.
I love it.
And so just to recap, there are 8 things that you can do to intentionally focus on the positive and give meaningful positive feedback. They are to praise effort, not outcome, and name invisible skills like regulation, flexibility, and self-awareness. And then use descriptive feedback instead of generic praise. So instead of saying good job, you can say good job for unloading the dishwasher. I really appreciate it. And then the fourth one is to catch neutral or small moments. And so, notice moments of calm, cooperation, tiny bits of flexibility. The fifth one is to separate behavior from identity. We don't want them to feel shame. We just want them to know that maybe what they did was not so appropriate and we need to do something different next time. And then the sixth one is to reflect strengths back during hard moments. So even if they're on the verge of a meltdown, you can say, I really appreciate how hard you're working. And then build positive feedback into routines. And that's all of them. Just kidding. There weren't 8, there were 7. Yeah, I don't know where I got the 8 from. Anyway, these are some questions that you can ask yourself one at a time just to gauge where you're at. We're not judging you, we're not fixing it right now, we're just observing. And so they are, what effort did my child make that I might have missed? Maybe they tried again after getting frustrated. Maybe they asked for help instead of melting down. So these are just things to notice. Like, what effort did your child make that you might have missed? And then the next one is, what skill was my child practicing, even if it didn't look successful? So were they practicing self-regulation or practicing flexibility, communication, patience, or persistence? Even if they weren't super successful in that skill, what were they practicing? And praise them for that effort. And then the next one is, when did my child feel safe enough to be themselves? What was happening in that moment? And what was I doing or not doing? So just think about, maybe ask your kid if they're old enough, when did you feel safe enough to be yourself? Or that's kind of a loaded question, but you can start talking about it,
I don't know about that one.
Yeah. I mean, if they're like a teenager, you could ask them that. But just
Okay,
think
Mom.
about when you saw, I would just think about this. When did you see them being the most carefree, the least masking? When were they truly themselves? And what were you doing in that moment? And then what is one strength I see in my child right now? Not a future strength, not a once they figure this out, like a right now strength. What do you see? And we are going to have all of these questions on a download that you can get if you go to Every Brain is Different. You can click on the link in the show notes and it will take you to the page that has all these. And you can just do this like once a week or once a day, once a month, just every so often, just to check in. Some other questions that you can ask yourself is, what did I do that supported my child's nervous system this week? Because we want to look at ourselves too. Like, what are we doing to help our child? Even if it was something small, like maybe you didn't yell at them when they spilled a bottle of grape juice on the floor. Maybe you kept your cool. That's awesome. And then, what kind of feedback does your child hear most from you lately? So is it corrected? Is it guidance? Is it encouragement? Just kind of think about what feedback you're giving your child. And just remember, There's no guilt here, just awareness. We're just observing what we're doing. We're not shaming ourselves. We're not making ourselves feel guilty if maybe we could be doing better. It's just awareness. So once again, if you want to get that download, you can follow the link in the show notes, and that will take you directly to the download, and you can download those questions to ask yourself. So just remember that neurodivergent kids don't need constant praise or forced positivity. They need accurate mirrors. And when we reflect effort, growth, and strengths back to them consistently, we help them build an identity rooted in capability, not correction. So we are helping them build their identity and not just thinking about everything that they do wrong all the time, or how bad they are, or how lazy they are, or whatever. So
I do wanna point out the forced
Yeah.
positivity. Like, I think that's
Yeah.
a really good thing. Of, oh my God, thank you so much. Or, hey, that was really great that you waited for your sister. Like, it should be natural. No,
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I see that a lot sometimes. Is we like don't know, or like we're overthinking it, and so it's like a forced positivity type thing, and then it's just awkward.
Yeah, and kids can tell when you're not
Yes, yeah.
genuine. Yeah, and so when you are genuine, they'll be like, "Does she really mean that, or is she just making that up to make me feel better?" You know? So, yeah, true fact. Don't have forced positivity. It doesn't work. Yeah. So, if you want support around this, if you want the download, you can go get that. If you want more support, you can join the neurodivergent parenting community. You can also follow the link in the show notes for that. And yeah, we hope you have a great week, and we'll see you back next time.